Eddie caught me a little bit short here. I'm texting my kids. Hold on, wait a minute. Yeah, I really am on TEDx right now. Smiley face. Send. Okay. Sorry about that. If it wasn't for my two oldest kids, Sydney, who's the young lady in front of her two younger brothers, and Andrew, who's in the extreme left-hand corner, and he is rather extreme up there. If it wasn't for my two oldest children, I wouldn't be as facile. I still am a little slow with texting, but I wouldn't be nearly as good with social media and texting as I am now. And in fact, because of that connection with my children and the social media world, I was reminded in preparing this talk of a talk that Dr. Sherry Turkle did for TED back in February 2012 in a talk called Connected But Alone. And in that talk, she referred to a text that she got from her daughter, in which getting that text was like getting a hug. And I resonated with that thought because up until fairly recently, I was pulling my hair out. I don't have a whole lot of hair, but I was pulling my hair out trying to get in contact with my two oldest kids while they were in college. You know, I would call them on my flip phone and leave them a voice message, you know. I would send an email, you know, AOL.com, you know. And they just weren't responding. And it wasn't until I befriended them on Facebook that we were connected on a daily basis. I could talk to them and they could talk to me. But as Dr. Turkle warned in her talk back in 2012, this efficiency of communicating, this connectedness may have some unintended consequences. And I wish to extend one of her thoughts today with you in terms of the notion of the mixed message and where social media and texting can let us down when it comes to the mixed message. Now, let me be clear that social media, texting can be a very powerful way of communicating straightforward, direct messages, whether they're emotional or not. Facebook proved this to us a month before Dr. Turkle gave her talk, in which, with nearly 700,000 users of Facebook, they did a little experiment with those users. And unbeknownst to many of those users, their Facebook postings were manipulated by the company to prove a point. For those of you who may not recall this particular experiment, well, here's my Facebook page recently. Very, kind of colorful. I'm kind of getting fancy with it. On the right-hand side, you'll see circled the news feeds. And as those of you who use Facebook regularly know, it's a real-time way of keeping up with your friends and what they're posting online. Now, what Facebook did is that if you were the user in this experiment, for some of you, they would say, let's censor out the positive feeds. So anytime a friend of yours posted a positive statement on their page, if you went to their page, you'd see it, but their news feed would be eliminated so you wouldn't see that they had posted that positive thing. And what they found is that if you were receiving that sort of censorship, your postings would become more negative and less positive as a response, not even knowing why that was occurring. And conversely, when they censored out the negative news feeds on another group of the 700,000 users, they found that those folks who had the censoring of their negative news feeds, their postings became much more positive and less negative in return. So clearly, texting and social media can have a powerful way of communicating in a very direct fashion. But that's not what I want to focus on today, this afternoon. I want to focus on when the message is mixed. So here's an example, recent example. I was texting my daughter. She recently was in her last trimester of her first pregnancy, and being the doting father of the social media age, I was going to stay connected, show my concern. She's in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee. I wanted to be connected. I wanted to know what's going on. And she had just had a 3-hour glucose tolerance test because she had failed the initial glucose tolerance test. And we were concerned that she might be becoming diabetic during her pregnancy. So we were both kind of worried about that. But she just told me that she had passed. And of course, we were very happy. I said, "Very good. How are you feeling?" And she told me that, "I'm okay. I'm exhausted. I'm okay. I'm exhausted." Was she really okay? Or was she exhausted? Here I am in Nashville, worried. Now, of course, somebody can be okay and exhausted, but that's the essence of that mixed message. I didn't have a context. I didn't really know how my daughter was doing. Now, the whole notion of the mixed message has been studied previously to the advent of social media and texting. Dr. Albert Mehrabian in the 60s studied mixed messages, but he was more concerned with what happens when somebody's verbal content doesn't match their facial expression or the tone of their voice or their body habitus, the face-to-face mixed messages. And he did a couple of studies back in the 60s that resulted in this famous pie chart that's been often used for public speaking courses and whatnot, which suggests that anytime someone speaks, their nonverbal communication overwhelms the content of what is actually said. Now, his research has been wildly overgeneralized. It was in many ways taken out of context. But the notion is that in a face-to-face mixed message, the consensus is that nonverbals are a powerful way of understanding what that mixed message actually means. And texting and social media deprives us of that auditory and visual context that helps us understand what is being described to us. Now, in the case of schizophrenia, for instance, individuals with psychoses described as schizophrenia can have real problems in terms of mixed messages. This is an example. The schematic talks about the case of someone, if, for example, I had schizophrenia and I was having an acute psychotic episode and I'm coming into work, and this individual who's pictured here has this rather stern face. One of the things that's known about individuals with schizophrenia is that they tend to make mistakes in reading the emotions of others, the facial expressions of others. And so I may misread this person's sternness as being one of anger. And in addition to that being an anger, if he gives me a verbal, terse hello or, how you doing, that mixed message may be misconstrued as he's really trying to make fun of me, or I need to do something, I need to defend myself because he really means something else. This misreading of visual and auditory context causes a misunderstanding, and sometimes a tragic misunderstanding with regards to the mixed message. Another example from psychiatry is in the case of individuals with autism spectrum disorders. What's been shown, and this is an example of the stimuli that was used to test these particular aspects out, it's been found that with folks with autism spectrum disorders, that when they look at the face and try to register what the facial emotion is, that they're much more likely in severe forms of this disorder to avoid looking at the eyes. That when they gaze at the face, they automatically hardwired to ignore the windows to the soul. And so when they get a particular mixed message, they're much more likely to make mistakes because of their misreading of the visual context that they're being presented with. So what I'm suggesting is that one of the problems with social media and texting is that deprived of visual context, deprived of auditory context, we can make a lot of mistakes. Now, I'm a practicing psychiatrist. I practice over at Meharry Medical College, and I know that oftentimes to make sense of what is going on in a person's life who's suffering depression, or who's going through psychosis, or struggling with drugs or alcohol, I need to see them. I need to be with them, because oftentimes some of the most important, valuable things that they have to say to me are difficult to get out, and they'll send mixed messages. And if I'm not there, if I don't put my cell phone down, if I don't put my tablets down, if I don't put my laptop away, I'm going to miss the meaning of that mixed message. So the next time you're presented with a mixed message, I encourage you, as you leave the auditorium here, go about your business, that you see those mixed messages as great opportunities to authentically connect with people, to greatly improve the relationships with those you care about, to make a phone call, Skype, FaceTime. Anybody tango? To pay a visit to the individual who sent you this mixed message and develop a deeper relationship with them. And while you're doing that, also consider how many mixed messages occur all the time through your texting and social media that you don't even see or don't even recognize, because that positive statement that you just received, you didn't see that person banging angrily away on their keyboard in anger, or that seemingly negative or serious email that you got, you didn't see the person rolling their eyes and laughing hysterically as they're sending that message. How often do you misread even the straightforward stuff? Well, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I'm going to go back and FaceTime my kids and tell them I had a good time. See you later.